What's up, y'all? It's Dr. David Roney. Almost messed up my challenge, man. But we will persist. I'm doing a challenge to make myself post 31 days straight of videos to my YouTube account because I do have things to say about finance. However, I haven't had the time to write blog posts or write on my Substack. So, videos it is. So I posted last night on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, at FiSurgy. I know it's really weird, but FiSurgi instead of Surgify. And if you have the Surgify handle, please let me have it. But anyway, so I posted a scenario. Basically, you are forced to move essentially, and you got option A, rent a house for $6,000 to $7,000, or option B, you get a 30-year fixed mortgage, I think at 5% is what I was saying, right? I left the details out specifically because I wanted to see how people thought about the issue. But the reality is like, I do have a change that is going to be happening, and I have to make a similar type decision. Oh, and the other caveat is for 2 years, right? And there were some really great answers in that thread, and I think they're important to point out, right? A lot of stuff that we think about our primary home is not 100% always based upon financial metrics. Sometimes you just fall in love with a house and you're like, look, I will make it work. Whether that's your budget, I'll cut back here or cut back there. Sometimes we buy too much of a house, right? The reality is when you're making a decision to buy a home, you need to take into account how long you're going to be in that home. At 2 years after purchasing a home, you haven't really made a dent in the principal, meaning paying down the cost of the home, right? Like you're just paying off interest at that point. Now, I will say if you are a sub 3%, sub 2%, like those situations are rare now, right? But there are people out there who have that, like you're still paying off interest, but you are making a little bit of a dent in the principal. Not a substantial dent, but you're making a dent in the principal, right? Because it's low interest rate. But the higher interest go, and remember, historically, the average, right, is typically around like 5.5% to 6.5% over the lifetime. So mortgage rates have gone up to 15 to 20%. And obviously, we were in a low mortgage rate environment for a long time. So we have to understand that the average is around 5 to 6.5, and we need to wrap our brains around that. So with that being said, is if you're buying a home and you only intend to stay in it for 2 years, then you really need to think like an investor, right? Can you rent out that home, right? What is the true purpose of that home? Are you the owner who is renting to the person, right? And you have to think separately. Is that home going to rent? If it is going to rent, what is it going to rent for? What are the market rents? And that's the reason why you're buying it, right? And so in that case, you're house hacking, right? And someone, actually it was a classmate of mine from the boat school, said, hey, you know, I would personally buy a duplex, stay in one half and rent out the other. And that's actually a smart move, right? That's called house hacking. That's how you can build up your real estate portfolio. It's a great way to build up your real estate portfolio. And it's a way that you can sort of get through and start to think about how to go about these things. That's important to really think about. And when you have these short time frames, right? If you are going to buy a home, like you have to think like an investor, not necessarily a forever homeowner, right? Buying a home comes with a lot of hidden costs, right? Whether it's the HOA fee that you didn't know about, that you should know about, lawn maintenance, maintenance in general, because things break on a home. How old is the home? Is it close to its 30-year cycle? Is it a 15-year roof? Is it not a 15-year roof? Does it have a sprinkler system? What is the maintenance that have been done on a sprinkler system? Does it have a waterless water heater, right? The home I bought in 2021, the maintenance on the waterless, the tankless, I should say, a tankless water heater, I said waterless, tankless water heater was never done, right? So a recent sort of more brand new tankless water heater went bad because the maintenance prior to us getting there was never done and it was unsalvageable. That was a $5,000 bill that I didn't expect. Or what about, hey, the builder put in old parts and put in an old air handler. So guess what? There's a $7,000 bill. These are things that you have to be prepared for, and you have to be able to save. So now, if you buy a home based upon the type of mortgage that you can afford, I can tell you right now, you're going to be hurting if you haven't accounted for the maintenance required and the upkeep required of the house. Don't buy too much house, right? And these things are important if you're only planning to stay in a house for short term. If you're planning to stay in a house for a long period of time and you never want to move again, yeah, you should still think about those things. But guess what? Like, these are things you're going to have to, like, you really have to take into consideration. Now, renting isn't 100% a walk in the park. I've had some terrible landlords in the past, absolute atrocious, right? 100%, to the point that I'm like, I never want to pay someone else's mortgage ever again, right? If you listen to Ramit Sethi, his thing is, he doesn't understand why anyone would ever want to own a home. He's on the extreme end, right? He also lives in New York, where owning a home is very prohibitive, and it's hard to get over the hump in owning a home there because the housing prices are so high. So if you want to live in a city, it's kind of expensive. So there are situations where renting makes sense, right? When I was in residency, one of the things that I knew I was going to be moving in 2 years, but I was paying like this exorbitant rent to live closer to the hospital in Chicago, which if you've ever been in Chicago, you know home prices and rental prices are up there, right? And what I wish I would have did, right, instead of going through that, because I knew I was moving in 2 years, I would have actually did the long-term stay, like extended stay America type hotel, right? Because I was never really at my house and I was paying for a lot of things. But we have to really think, when we're thinking through, like, figuring out where you're going to live is in a very, very emotional decision, right? Is there good schools around? Is it safe? I don't want to have to come home and worry about my car being on bricks. Those are important things, right? So as you go forward with life and you start to figure out what is going to work for you, don't forget to think like an investor. Give yourself some grace and be realistic, right? If you say, hey, I think I can afford a mortgage of $5,500 or $3,400 or whatever, look at houses that account for a mortgage that are 80% of that value, and give yourself some margin of safety, because that is important. Very, very important. Now, renting is the all-in cost. There shouldn't really be a lot of extra additives, right? Unless you're signing a lease for a single family home and the owner's like, guess what, man? All the utilities, all the lawn maintenance has all been offloaded onto you, and know that up front, right? So don't go at the top of your budget every single time when you're looking for a house. Go about 80% of what you truly can afford and give yourself a margin of safety. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. Talk to you later. Peace.